Welcome to Funnel Reboot, the podcast that shares ideas on how to upgrade your lead generation. Here is your host, Glenn Schmeltzley.
Hey, Glenn here. Welcome to Funnel Reboot, where we explore how to upgrade our lead generation. Today, we're diving into how to stand out in search results. First, I want to remind you that there's only one reason I talk with certain people or discuss a topic here, because you asked for it. And if you have a suggestion for my next guest or topic or past episode feedback, I want to hear it. So tweet me or reach out to me on social at Funnel Reboot, comment back to me on the form on our website, or leave listener feedback at 613-703-7073. So to today's episode, as cliche as it sounds, content is king. Digital marketing demands that we write and record and edit and lay out content. This precious material we make is used in prospect research or in client interactions, and it's up to us to anticipate their every content need. I don't know about you, but I rack my brain to imagine what questions they might have. Most of us have done everything we can think of to make the answers available. But there's one thing most marketers haven't done. That is structuring their site's content using schemas. These pieces of code matter enough to marketers that, even if we're not too technical, we should understand the basics of what they do. So I've brought someone who's so confident in the positive ROI schemas can bring companies, she and her co-founder built a business around it. She is the co-founder and CEO of Schema app, an application that looks at your site and helps tag your content so search engine bots can crawl and read it. Before starting this company, she earned a degree in applied math and engineering and a certificate for innovation and strategy at MIT. And she managed technical services on a global scale at Cisco Systems. Whenever she gets the chance to speak or write, she takes it to encourage site owners to use proper, connected schema markup. She does all of this, plus being a mom and a rower, from her home in Guelph, Ontario. I want you to get ready for an interview that will energize you to mark up your site's content in order to stand out in both organic and paid search. Let's go to our talk with Martha Van Berkel. Welcome, Martha Van Berkel.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, thank you for joining. I'm really glad to do this. And the topic that we're going on is schemas, or structured data, as some call it.
Yes.
So I think, Martha, it's probably a good idea, given that this is an area that not everybody knows in digital marketing, to maybe clear up some misconceptions or set the stage with what it is. Let's first decide what it is not, okay? So let me see here. Is schema a way to do like black hat, rigged web page, SEO ranking, fooling the search engine? Is that what it is?
I'm like an honest Canadian. Do you really think I would work in an area of search that's black hat? No. This is like a totally white hat, Google documented advanced strategy that like allows you to actually take control of how your content shows up in search. So like that's the brilliant part that I love about it. And I always like to say like, well, so schema markup or structured data, those are like used interchangeably with this area of search. But how you actually like know or what the outcome is, and we'll kind of dig into outcomes is those extra rich results in search. And what is a rich result? I always describe to my mother, it's like when you look for a specific shoe and you see stars and price information like under the search result. Or one of my favorites for, I'm a tech business, but or B2B businesses is like FAQs. So it's a
Yep.
specific topic or early awareness area that you're trying to really stand out on. And now there's like 2 FAQs that like answer key early buyer questions that then take them to your website to exactly where you want to go. And booyah, like you've now managed like that customer journey. So it's a control point and it's totally white hat.
Yeah, for sure. And I think maybe the other thing that will just bring along like the caboose on this train is the notion of exactly how smart search engines are. So, we're principally talking Google here, although Bing, will
Yep.
will follow in the same footsteps. But there might be some people out there, and I'm going to point to a industry publication that I saw, which will not be named, that seem to think that the search engines are only smart enough to understand that a website out there has keywords on it, and if there's information on it, that the search engine can shoot somebody over to that website. And here's my, exhibit A. So this is out of this publication. It says brands must have actionable keywords and put them in the website's schema markup, also known as code. This will allow the website to provide search engines with more information, which will be important for specific searches people make. Are
It's
we,
like someone
are we all
Google.
up
It's
to
like
date there?
so it's like someone like used Google Translate to articulate like what structured data like into terms that no one would understand. So
Yeah.
like let's address the like are search engines smart? I think that's like a good place to
Yeah. How
start. And
smart
then
are they?
they're super smart, right? Like the whole reason in 2011 they came up with this way for you to use code to describe exactly what your page and content's about so that their machines can infer what it's about. And I use those words
So,
very,
okay. So
very like,
something's properties.
yes. So something like
Okay.
it's trying to understand the context of the content, but the machine is very logical, right? So, where natural language processing, like is sort of like inferring and taking things out of like big chunks of data. What structured data is doing is saying like, help us organize the content on the page to understand its context in the context of the topic of the page so that I can at least process that piece. And then I'll use natural language processing within that property. So like the search engines are super smart
Okay.
and structured data is again, a control point in a way for marketers to use to make sure that the content they're writing is absolutely understood by the machines. And the machines are Google, the machines are Alexa, the machines are Bing, the machines are other sort of like Internet of Things type of things that are trying to provide service. So like those, it's this is think of this as like step one in the marketer's journey to be like really relevant to like machines for automation and understanding. So
Yeah.
so that's like so they've got it right. So it is code. You do have to translate your content into it. But keywords, like I don't even like keywords. Actually, like I'll just say it like that. And the reason I don't like keywords is I joke that it's like 1990s search engine optimization, right? So a keyword is a word in a phrase. We're talking about AI and context here, right? So like a keyword is only part of the sentence. Like and so right now they talk about entities or topics, right? So, when you think about like I'm optimizing, this page because I want people who are buying my software to like understand the benefits like for their industry. So we sell a lot to tech businesses and healthcare and so forth. Like, so I'm describing that this is an article with an FAQ that's about this specific software, which links to the software page where that software product's described. So I'm like, basically, it's like almost all these directional arrows for the search engines to say like,
Yeah.
this is who I am. This is where you go to find more about that product. This is where you find out more about like this area of search. This, like it's all those like indicators so that you get the outcome, the beautiful carrot that Google gives you of that rich result, that extra information in, but also so you get more clicks, right? Because like that's what we're trying to get so that we have the opportunity to sell to more customers, right?
Yeah. Or maybe if I could amend what you said to more relative or relevant clicks. That's the word.
Yes, relevant or quality clicks is
Yeah,
one of the
high
ways I
quality.
often talk about it.
So why I guess we're both, removing the importance from keyword is because keyword was back in a day where the search engine was literally just doing a match. Now what it seems to be, and if I'm on the right track, Google invested heavily in what they call the semantic web and their knowledge
Totally.
graph, right? So it understands all of these entities. It understands that a chair is a kind of furniture. It understands that a
Yeah,
a wrongful dismissal suit is something that an employment lawyer would do.
correct.
It gets all these associations, and so if you're exposing, like you said, putting little arrows on your site to go, okay, this is the thing that would be relevant to that, then it plugs into the knowledge graph, and then Google can use it more quickly and maybe more within our control, right?
Well, right. Like when you translate your markup or your website into structured data, you're basically making your own knowledge graph. Like you're translating it into semantics. Like, and I sometimes hesitate to use some of this language because it gets into the pieces. But like Google basically stores all of its information in what we call triples. Like right. So this is sort of like two words in their relationship between the two, which is exactly what we're doing with structured data. So like we're a semantic technology company
Mm-hmm.
that does structured data because like we get how Google needs to understand it and like collect it and understand it. What's cool though is as digital marketers, like you are now empowered with a really clear way of doing that. And that's super exciting. And future, Martha who likes to think like, where's the world going to be in 5 years? Right. It's like, 2 years ago we were talking about like, well, voice search is using it. And then Google announced in 2019, like, yes, if you translate your content into structured data, it will be understood by voice search, other things, right? Which is like all
Yeah.
those IoT devices. And I think they had like a picture of a car and a watch and like a Nest. And then, also the web, right? So like to me, like that, what's the next piece? Well, my question is like, how do we use this like really robust knowledge graph like to enhance other parts of marketing, right? Like we're doing personalization, we're doing on-site search, like we're doing all these other things that have to have context and understanding and trying to pull out like how does that content piece have certain properties or elements, like it's all in this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So structured data, like think of it as like both a like really great tactic to differentiate your business today, and not everyone's doing it and most people don't do it well, and it informs content strategy and other pieces, and by the way it's likely future proofing you for other really cool things that you'll want to do as like an innovative marketer.
No doubt. So for the marketer though, who hasn't quite, gotten on this bandwagon, um, and they're looking through their website, what should they be thinking would be the most immediate things that they should? Um, I thought perhaps maybe an easy way to couch this would be if it has a who, what, when, where, type of question to it. That would be a good candidate.
Yeah, I actually start more about like what are your business objectives, right? So like every business has like a business goal that they're trying to do, and they're trying to like they're usually focused on selling one area of products or services, or trying to get if you're a hospital, maybe it's like I want to see growth in these like services areas, and so like my thing is like usually it's good to align your strategies to those things that are like a business priority, right? So the other way to find out, like, if you don't know what the top down focus is, like coming through the business, then the question is like, what are the important things as a marketer that you're trying to have your customers find? Right? Like,
Mhm.
where do you actually need to get your prospects to land? And the reason I look at it in both those two ways is like if your job is then to show the return on investment or the results that you're having and impacting the business because you like being employed, you want to show value, like those are the two things that you're gonna like want to like if you get more eyes, more clicks, more impressions like to those pages using structured data, then that's sort of what you do. So the first is like what are those things, right?
Yep.
And then the question is like what are all the rich results would be the other thing you want to look at. So Google has a rich result gallery, and I'll make sure Glenn has that to share in his notes. And the rich result gallery tells you like these are all the different things that can help you stand out in search and get more visibility and clicks. And they range from, I've mentioned FAQ, ratings, price for products. What's good is if you have products that don't have pricing, you can still do FAQ on them.
Hmm.
How to is a really great area if you're trying to be like known in a certain area. Recipes, videos, question and answers, which is really great if you're like a really support driven or centric organization. There's lots of different ways. In fact, there's like over 32 different rich results, and they're evolving. And some are better for showing up on mobile, some are better for showing up for different types of content. So once you know, like you have your list of like, okay, this is depending on your size of site, like these are the 5 or 10 or 12 like different key content types. So it might be your blog, your products, your services,
Yep.
maybe it's your people, your support, your video content, your landing pages. Okay, those are some to name. Then the next question is like, is there content on those pages today? Or is the content, those pages, how they are today? Are they eligible to get a rich result? So for example, like, is the video on it? And if there's a video, like, is the publish date and the description and other things available? That one's often available like through a YouTube API or Wistia or et cetera. Or like, your product pages. Okay, we don't have pricing or ratings on them,
Mm-hmm.
but I have FAQs, or like, oh, I have blogs. Great, my blogs are there, but and like my date published is actually a date and not like 5 days ago, right? Like so within like the documentation from Google, they'll then say like, this is the type of content you have to be eligible for these. So when we work with customers, because it's what we do every day, all day, is basically we go through this process. Like our whole sales process is like, what's important for your business? What do you need found? Like, are they eligible today? What is eligible today? And we like to like not just look at doing optimizing things for understanding. Why? Because it's super hard to measure, right? So if your job is to show return on investment for these things, like you need to be able to measure, and we'll talk about measuring in a minute.
Sure.
So you have your list, you look at what rich results you can achieve today. Like there'll be some things that are great how they are today. Amazing. Start there. And then you're going to do all this great learning, and you're going to come up with a roadmap with either that you're going to change the content on the page, or you're going to work with your content teams on the page to say, anytime you publish anything, I want an FAQ module on that, because the FAQ will then buy me this like third of the page on the search result. And by the way, like if you just think like that when you publish any content, booyah, we're going to get like more visibility on everything we publish. Everybody wins, right? So what do you publish? Like all that core content that you're trying to optimize, that you're investing all your other effort in, and then you're going to actually like design it so that not just it's being great and meeting the humans' needs, but it's going to wow those search engines, those machines, and award you with more visibility in search. And then you're going to be a hero, because like when you do your monthly or quarterly reviews, you're going to be like, hey, look, this was our search results before we did structured data. Here's the ones after. Like we're taking up half the page and look at there's stars, there's FAQs, there's all these other things.
Love it. Just before we move on, we're both in Canada, got multiple languages. Can Schema understand multilingual websites?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the schema.org vocabulary, which is what I've referred to in like what came out in 2011, is in English. So
Okay,
like the
and
tagging,
that's an industry standard body, right?
it's a global standard. And I don't even know if their documentation is like in multi-language. However, anything can go between those like code snippets, right? So like within the JSON-LD, any language can be used for that. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to take you to the next one there. You brought up JSON and JSON LD.
Yes.
What the heck is that?
Okay, so it's just type of code. Like don't like I like don't sweat it. So a little bit of history. So like in 2011, when structured data first came out, most people were implementing it with microdata. And I always think of microdata as like you're putting tags like throughout the whole page. So it's almost like it's a type of XML tag, like,
Yeah.
but it's like throughout the whole page.
And this is inline, right? That would be what they call inline, where it's right beside the stuff.
Correct. Like it's sort of like, think of it as like it's almost like the bread of the peanut butter sandwich around your content, right? Like it's sort of like around the content. However, like you can imagine if you're a robot, you have to then like go through the entire page in order to get all the structured data. And that's expensive, right? You always have to think about like this from the search engine's perspective. So JSON LD is where like you get the same information, but it's in like a big chunk, right? So it's like in a chunk of code at like somewhere on the page. And so it's a lot faster to process. It's a lot, actually, we like it also because it's like less fragile. Like if they break something else on the page, they're not going going to break that chunk of code.
Yes.
And JSON-LD is really just like, it's like the translation. But instead of it being, again, tagged throughout the page, it's like in its own like code block at the top. And Google, like since 2015, has preferred JSON-LD. The only time like people use microdata is perhaps if you're like building it in site and that doesn't change ever, or you can dynamically use JavaScript to generate
Okay.
JSON-LD. But JSON-LD is Google's preferred method today.
Sure. And for my own sake, so JSON, like I've tried for fun, because I have no hobbies, to open up JSON files.
So JSON and JSON-LD are slightly different.
Are they?
Yes. So, and I don't know how to describe the exact difference, but I'm sure if we Google it, we could find an answer.
But what I'm getting at is it also does have like a one-to-many thing, it seems, where let's say I have 3 service lines on one page, that chunk of JSON LD is able to articulate that, okay, services and then service 1, service 2, service 3. Like it gets that whole...
Yeah. So let's talk about connected versus like a hierarchy in web page, like HTML.
Go for it.
So like in structured data, you're describing the relationships between things.
Yep.
So a relationship is different than a hierarchy. So a hierarchy might be like your H1s, your H2s, and then you have like 3 H2s because you're describing those services.
Yep.
Whereas the relationships is like these services are offered by this company. And, the first service that this company offers is service 1. But they also offer this second service 2. Now within service 1 and service 2, you're going to have like what we would call nested or properties that are directly associated with that service. And then what's also cool, or what I get excited about with structured data, and I often will talk about like connected schema markup is that like I can then also refer to a description in Wikipedia to say like use some insurance, like I'm doing structured data services, right? Like maybe that's like an area I know better, right?
Okay, sure.
And structured data is described in Wikipedia here. So like you can actually like use structured data to also refer to things off your page, off your website that help bring clarity on exactly what it is. Because you could guess Google knows Wikipedia, right? Like it has that dictionary of all those entities of topics and things that it knows. And then, but you can also refer to it within your site because like that page that's talking about my services. Oh, and by the way, service 1 has a video that's about this and also, like has an FAQ, but it's like about that specific one service. So we know that if someone's Googling that specific service, it's going to get that FAQ in that video because it's related. But I can also then say like, oh, it's, the service is offered by the company. Well, the company is described on the homepage. So Google, if you want to go find out more about my company, I'm going to refer to the URL of my homepage because that's where organization's defined.
And I think I now understand what you meant when you said you're creating your own knowledge graph on your site.
Yes, if you do it properly. And so like when people ask like Martha, what are your pet peeves? Okay, we already covered keywords, so we don't need to go after that. But like islands of schema is my other one thing I totally hate. So it's like, okay, peanut butter markup is my other thing I loathe. But so islands of schema are where like you just describe things, but you don't explain how they're related to anything else. Yeah. So it's like, well, that's really great. You have a service, but like who offers it? And like, where's the action to like contact more? And like, what is the service about? And like, do you have blogs that are about that same thing? Like that's how our human brains work, right? So that's like how your content needs to be referred. Same way, like, Yoast and Jono, who does structured data for Yoast, and I are often on podcasts together, and I would consider him an esteemed colleague. But like he and I differ in our approaches in how to do structured data. So if you're using a Yoast plugin, there's a good chance you have web page markup on every page. Well, of course, Glenn, it's a web page. It's freaking Google. We're talking about AI here, and he and I have this debate all the time. And so like so it's like don't put the same markup on every page because then like why does that page exist? Because the page should be talking about the specific topic that you want people to go to for that topic. And so when you think of your website, what should you optimize? Well, those really pages that are super specific, that are answering the questions or like, answering that intent of that search, right? But it's very, very specific. And specificity may be my favorite word for 2022. I think as marketers, like the whole generalized pages about anything and everything don't work anymore. Like Google's too smart for that. Like people are asking specific questions.
Yes, and while maybe our regular websites aren't ready for full personalization, if we really gain conviction around this sense that Google does understand a searcher's intent. Because let's face it, before they came to our website, there was a extremely long list of searches that they did. And Google looks at all of those. And they will look at the clicks and searches that they do after this particular search that takes them to your site. And, we really do need to believe this. I think we have to then be willing to get away from islands of schema. It's a signal that we're all in as marketers as well. If we really do buy, it's not quite personalization where our website's doing it, but Google in tandem with our website is taking the person to exactly what they need to answer what they want right now.
Yeah. And it means we have to like have that content there, and we have to evolve to understand like what are the questions people are asking. And what's exciting is that your sales team, your like support team, your administrative staff, they know those questions people are asking because they're answering them in those like initial discovery calls and all those other pieces. The question is like how do you use that on the web so that you can guarantee they've Googled it before they call you, right?
Yeah,
Like
or the
they say
chat.
like 80% of like research
Yeah,
is done before they call you, right?
that's it. Or look at the chatbot logs that are on your site. I mean, this
Exactly.
information is all around us. So if it's going to result in things for organic, I want to come back to this, and then we'll talk about paid. But in organic, there are people who cheer for having rich snippets and the ability for Google to give them that information. And then there are critics who say, but these are like page zero search wins where my website
Or like the
gave
zero
Google
click,
the
yeah.
information. Yeah, but the person never clicked to my website because they said, hey, thanks, I got my information. Bye. What do you say to that?
Well, I think it has to be like, what is the intent of the click or the visibility, right? So like a lot of times, like if they get their answer, you've just delighted them and your brand is associated with them getting delighted. And by the way, like if they're not clicking through, like they probably weren't going to go buy something or call from you anyways, right? Like they're doing research and they need to do it. So again, like
Mhm.
being thoughtful about like what type of content. You don't care if you get a click because like you want that brand awareness, you want to be known as the experts for it, like you're good. And then the other is like you have to be savvy about like how you use FAQ. And I talked about like thinking about where you want to take them in your journey, right? So if you're answering a question and the question specifically about perhaps like an industry topic, and you have a how-to document that answers that or like goes into more detail or more specificity, like you can put that in your answer in the FAQ with hopes that you're going to lead them on that next step of their buying journey or research journey, but onto your site, right? So part of it is like, you want to be of service to your customer. You're not always going to get the click. The other piece that I would say is like, a zero click probably means that again, they weren't probably going through. And so like if you wanted that click, your clicks are kind of vanity metrics anyway. So like you want people who are
Yeah.
really wanting to engage with you.
Yeah.
And again, this is where like you either like I don't know, what's the percentage of like searches going on in Google now? Like it's what do you know what the latest data is? It's probably like 83 to 87%. Like it's up there.
Yes, of course.
And
Yeah.
and so my question is like, so you're gonna either pay for that click
Right.
or you're going to try to like again manage, take control of how that brand is and give Google that information so that you can get the organic click. And Google's fickle, right? We all know this, right? They're trying to make money like everyone else, right? Like they've added rich results in paid search. Like they have paid search keeps changing, keeps like taking over. They have like people always ask, they like move, they like release all their algorithms and swishes everyone around.
Yep.
But like, isn't that part of why be doing SEO is fun? Like, I think like this is like part of the game. And so yeah, like, are you going to play the game or are you going to pay for your clicks? Like, it's I don't know.
Yeah.
To me, it's like great. Stop moaning about it. Let's do something about it
Right.
instead.
So
Like,
so
let's just
more of the all in, and definitely not because I imagine some people might think, well, what if I make it clickbaity? I put something in the you know schema that says, well, this information is here, but you've got to come to our site. No, that's a losing proposition. Like you said, they're going to sense that, and they'll just go to the next result that's easier to give them what they want.
Yeah, it's sort of it's sort of like those pages you go to where like they do super clickbaity on some like royalty news, and then you
Yeah.
end up like having to look at like 20,000 ads before you're like this is like a one-word answer. Like, this is
Right.
like, and it's like, damn, I totally like bought into the clickbait that so, and
Right.
again, like
But like you said, that negative connotation sticks to the brand just as much as where you delight them, right? So you be
absolutely.
careful what you wish for.
Yeah. So I guess my point is like play the game. But again, if like you're in a B2B business or you're like even a local business or you're in healthcare and so forth, like you're trying to delight your customers, right? Like you're trying to create that amazing experience. So great, like find ways to do that. And you can really use structured data to really wow them.
You talked about measures earlier. Probably a good point for it, because if we are going to the trouble, and especially with these zero click scenarios, do we? Is there a consolation prize at least? Can we go to Search Console or somewhere and say,
Absolutely.
all right, this
Yeah.
information at least got seen?
Absolutely. And like frankly, this is like how I have a business doing this because otherwise it's too hard to show the results and it's not worth the effort. So within Google Search Console, you can actually, when you go and look at your performance data, you can look at search appearance. So it's like one of the headers like amongst the tabs below. And I can, if you remind me, Glenn, I'll get you the
Yep.
link of like where that goes. So it's called search appearance. I'll say the majority of rich results have a search appearance report. So you can literally look for a time frame and it'll tell you exactly how many clicks, how many impressions, and what the click through rate are for those pages that have that structured data. And I love this because you're like, oh, look, we're like growing, or, like Google's fickle, right? So sometimes it's like, ooh, Google's like not loving the FAQ this quarter, right? Like we see them come down. It's like, okay, this was with an algorithm change. So it's like, oh, we have to now look at, what keywords are we actually ranking for? What questions are people answering? Oh, the market's changed. Great. I now need to make new content that those FAQs are more relevant and sort of be dynamic with those changes. But you can see it all in Search Console. And then we actually like have built a performance analytics piece of our product so that like we can also look at how are they performing against each other and what pages aren't covered where you might have an ample opportunity kind of looking at in comparative year over year, quarter over quarter, and depending on your business cycle, like that data can be really interesting.
Sweet. So let's bring in paid here, because I'm not sure how many people know this, but whether we're talking regular search ads or we're talking shopping ads, there is dynamic information which can be fed into Google Ads that is very schema-like in nature. And I'm not sure if you've got any experience with that, or a take on it, but it's certainly there. It's like a parallel universe to all this stuff
It
over in
is.
organic.
Yeah, so like their ratings is probably the one that like I think is
Yep.
super interesting. The other one that we see actually like in organic results is price drop, and this one's really interesting. This was announced, I want to say like this time last year, and it was like if you don't even have to change anything, if you had pricing on your products, Google was now doing comparative for you. So it was like in their, big history database, like they could show you how pricing was changing. Now,
Mhm.
to me, this is interesting because, Google now allows you to shop for your automotive like cars, like by doing comparisons, right? So all those automotive websites that were like, doing that for you, like Google's owning that piece, right? Like these are the more disruptive things, like aggregator sites, people like travel websites. Oh my gosh, like travel websites, like I'm going to take a piece of that margin for people looking travel. Like now everyone books their hotels and, like plane stuff through there, right? So like that to me is like more the disruptive kind of experience changes that like they're using data. They need to consume data to do comparison. The price drop, they are pulling the data from structured data to look at where that price drop is happening. But you talked about ads. So with ads, I haven't dug into specifically ads. I have a story, but it's a little old now. So I'll share it, but like it's old. So I won't, like a couple years old is, we have had people report their quality score goes up after adding structured data to their site,
Oh,
which makes sense. It's easier to understand, right? It's following guidelines.
yep.
Um, No one's agreed to do a case study with me on that yet, though.
Well, this is the thing on paid, right? I mean, everybody's interested in keeping their cards close to their vest.
Yeah.
What I would say though is the two main areas: structured snippet extensions, and there's a whack of them. If you are a school, they do it for courses. They have obviously, degree programs too. But the travel one you mentioned, they've got
Yeah.
destinations, they've got different insurance coverages, your service catalog. The times that you will offer something, if you're doing events, the shows, it goes on and on. And then the other one
Yeah.
is add customizers, and customizers can pull in information like reviews and bring that straight in. I think people need to imagine that, like you said, Google is going to come into an industry like automotive and they're going to take it over. They're not, folks, let me dispel any illusion here. They're not taking it over and just going to stop at the organic stage. Okay. They're taking it over and they may begin with how to bring it into organic, but they're, of course, looking at how they can monetize it.
Absolutely. Like always. And like, I guess like my favorite way of doing like ads with structured data is like, tell me what you pay cost per click. And then let's show the ROI by showing how many clicks you're getting through organic. Right.
Yeah, that's great.
So it's a great way for the SEOs to say like, hey, well, there's different ways for us to get clicks. And what I like about, structured data is that it's like, whether you're using a SaaS platform like mine, or you're like having your development team sort of ache through it, is that like, it is ongoing. Right. So like, we've seen people add it and see hockey sticks like in clicks that they're now like showing up, and or they'll proactively put how to on like their desktop and mobile, and then Google only supported mobile for how to, and then in March is for desktop. Well, these B2B tech companies who had it on there, they saw a huge
Right.
increase because
Right.
all of a sudden they were getting huge impressions for their technical how to's like on desktop, which is like where their users were coming from. So there's lots of ways that like depending on the organization, if they're like working together, one person, you're like an SEO that does everything, like ads and SEO and so forth. Or if you're competing for budget, like that's a great way to make that ROI conversation.
Yeah. And as you said, if you're getting on top of it, wherever the motivation is, you could receive first mover advantage.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
So you brought up a dev team, and clearly there's a build versus buy dynamic here. So can you just lay out for us quickly what we would consider if we're thinking of either paying internally for IT people to do it, or if we're going to buy a tool?
Yeah. So a lot of the pieces with regards to like how often your content and your page structure changes. So that's sort of like the big question that we ask. So like if your teams like are often iterating and being agile sort of in how you're doing content, you can have your dev team create it, except it's likely going to break and need to be updated often. And I share that like that can be both slow you down as well as be very costly. And then depending on your access and availability of those devs, then it's also hard. The other piece is like a lot of developers don't know structured data. So like you have to also make sure that you really understand how to explain how you either want the dynamic JSON-LD to be generated, or exactly how you want things nested and so forth. And I would say like the people who are like developers who are also technical marketers who also understand structured data are very, very rare.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, it would be more over on the database side than it would, I think, beyond the.
It depends. It depends on how your
Yeah,
website's built, right? Now, the good news is if you're on something like Shopify or WordPress or BigCommerce, like there's plugins that do some of the basics, right? So they'll like have you fill in forms to do your organization. It'll do your blogs.
yeah,
Like in Schema app, like we have something for Shopify, BigCommerce, and also for WordPress. And Yoast has another one. Like they do a lot of structured data there. That's a good start, right? Like if that's all you've got, like great. But often like you'll have it's like that's great, Martha, but I want FAQ on my blog to show up. Like that's where like you need that control point. So we're like a software as a service that allows you to do like structured data on anything at scale. We like do advanced nested stuff. We help you with your strategy, so you make sure your content's good. So we are like an end-to-end solution with support. And we're called Schema. Like we're known around the world. This is what we do. We've been doing it since 2015. And part of the reason we built Schema app is because My co-founder is one of those superstar people who knows digital marketing and is a developer and a semantic technologist. And he was like, no one wants to do this by hand. This is terrible.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think of it, if I were to take it back to an old world example, and that scale word you used, hugely important. If I were, let's say, trying to, I sail to a new land and we start, a book press and we start making books. And I say, I'm going to make a library. These books need to be ordered. Okay, so I can do a shelf and I can, start to move maybe beyond a shelf to a full-blown rack. Once I start to need many index cards or, a search capability so that I know it's in my library, that what you said, that scale thing. I mean, aisles upon aisles upon aisles of, books or items. If that's what your website may one day be, then you have to look at a tool, because that's what you're going to be into. You're going to be like that lonely librarian all day and all night, just sorting it.
Well, we also talk about it as like, do you want to be doing like tactics where you're sort of like in the weeds doing stuff, or do you want to be doing strategy?
Yeah.
And whether you have a large SEO team, like if one person is like focused on structured data, like amazing, but it's so rare. It's so rare that there's actually someone who has that capability. And so like whether it be large organizations like SAP, who we work with, or smaller high growth companies that sort of where it's like a one person who's trying to do everything, like they love us because like we just help them get it done, and then they just get to like coordinate all the other things.
Yeah,
So
do better things. Martha, if people want to find out more about Schema app or you, where can they go?
Sure. So I would go to www.schemaapp.com, schemaapp.com. Lots of resources there. The other is you can check us out on LinkedIn and follow us there. Tons of content and sort of resources that we share there to help the world get educated.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, thank you very much for joining me. And for the listener, if you like what you've heard today, please feel free to find somebody else that you think would find information about how to keep on top of your website's information. Please go ahead and share this episode. And I hope that this helps you make your funnel even better.
Thanks for listening. Follow the show on Twitter @Funnel Reboot. If you like what you have heard today, please consider leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts.